Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a happy 2025 to you. It seems like it was just yesterday we were in 2024 celebrating San Francisco 49ers going to the Super Bowl. Now we are, I guess in a way, celebrating the end of the 2024 season because it's been so miserable for the San Francisco 49ers this year, but I hope you had a wonderful holiday season with your family and friends. I hope you enjoyed your time off work, or if the kids were out of school, hope you went on a nice vacation, had a good time. Today's going to be a little different. I'm going to kind of combine two podcasts, maybe three, into three short abridged versions. I'm still on vacation with my wife up in the Bay Area, so forgive me if this is a very quick in and out podcast compared to the previous hour plus long ones we've done previewing and reacting to games, but I want to quickly talk about this Lions Monday Night Football loss. San Francisco loses 40-34. We'll dive into the Cardinals game this Sunday and talk a little bit about Brock Purdy's future in San Francisco. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I apologize once again for an audio-only version. I will be back Sunday night, if not then Monday morning, with the video versions on YouTube. So thank you for being patient, but stay tuned for what is to come in the next few days or so. So let's talk about the Monday Night Football loss against the Detroit Lions very quickly here. I thought this was the best the Niners offense had looked all season. This was a finely tuned machine. Yes, there were still lulls in the game, but ultimately, I thought this was exciting. It felt really good to see this team still has this high end, can beat anybody potential in a really, really bad year like this. You can just tell that there was this mentality of we are not going to let the Lions come in and punk us. And yes, they still lost, and through two missed field goals and a missed PAT, maybe that's why. But the offense, even the defense to a certain degree, like we are not like everything the Lions threw at San Francisco for 3.5 quarters. Like the Niners had an answer for every single time offensively. Like they looked great. Brock Purdy was perfect through about 3 quarters, and I guess the final drive in the third quarter was the bad one, but other than that, he was borderline. Like, that's a $65 million quarterback. He was precise. Ricky Pearsall was phenomenal. George Kittle, over 1,000 yards again for the 4th time in his career. Like, everything was working, maybe outside of the running game for San Francisco, but overall, as my dog sneezes behind me, overall, a really, really I thought great game for the offense. You know, this year has been so hard to watch in regards to watching the offense stumble and fall and not be themselves and look as if, you know, they just really can't find any momentum or rhythm. And Kyle Shanahan on that first drive, I thought it was a perfect script. There was reverses, there was pitches, Purdy was on point. Debo looks like he has his legs back under him. Pearsall was involved heavily early and heavily throughout the entirety of the game. Got a 4th down conversion on that first drive. Jennings was blocking Tyrion Arnold out of the back of the end zone. Like, everything was working. And again, that first drive was a statement of we're not going to get punked. Like, we are not going to let you come in here and embarrass us. And I love that. That said, all the great things that happened in this football game, like Brock Purdy finishes the day a 77% completion percentage, 377 passing yards, 4 total touchdowns, including 1 rushing touchdown. Again, he was almost perfect for 3 quarters. All the woes, all the concerns that we had about Purdy, and maybe still have, in regards to the deep ball accuracy, not seeing the field well, that was gone. It was like Purdy had, like the veil had been lifted, and he could see again. And he was almost perfect. The 40-yard pass to Garendo on the left sideline when they're backed up against their own end zone, I'm not kidding you, that is one of the best passes I've seen from Brock Purdy in his career. He's stepping up in the pocket. There is no space to go up in the pocket, and he still makes that throw while being hit. It is an incredible throw. If you haven't seen the slow-mo of it, please go watch it. It is awesome. Even the deep balls to Pearsall, like they were, in a weird way, and I don't want to compare players, but we have been having this comparison with Pearsall and Brandon Ayuk ever since the pre-draft process. Their testing scores are similar, although Pearsall out-tested Brandon Ayuk. This idea of having two receivers that can beat man coverage on your offense, like that's why you draft Pearsall in the first round. And I get Ricky's had this up and down rookie season where people are clamoring for more, and at times, like, he's open, Purdy just doesn't throw to him, or other times he's not involved in the offense whatsoever. Obviously, the offseason stuff certainly hurt him being shot and whatever, but the way I viewed Pearsall in this game, in my mind, I was like, oh, that's what this offense would have looked like had Brandon Ayuk been healthy all year. And maybe to a lesser degree in certain games and more so in others, but I was like, oh, you have a receiver that, this year can beat anybody, that can get you 8 catches for 141 yards and 1 touchdown and beat man coverage consistently. That's always wide open. I was like, oh, Pearsall is being Brandon Ayuk today. And like that to me gives me, it gives me a reason to believe in Purdy, but also Pearsall. Of like, okay, like if this is the coming out party, like this is a performance to build off of and go into the offseason saying, okay, like Pearsall is legit. He can do this. It isn't a one-off. Now he has to prove that, but in my head, I'm like, okay, great. He ends this year with, one of his last 2 games, 141 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 8 catches, like looks like a number 1 receiver in this offense, beating a, albeit banged up Detroit defense, like still playing really well. Like that matters. There was juggling catches. There was, deep balls on the sideline, a 39-yard crosser. Like there was so many great things to see from Pearsall in this game that I think the Niners, like the idea that, wow, like we're gonna have Ayuk and Pearsall in the same offense if Ayuk can come back fully healthy, whatever that is, like you can kind of see the plan coming into place. And I get a lot has to happen for that to come to fruition, but like I saw the vision of what they envisioned, what their plan was when they drafted Pearsall. Now, again, I hope we can see that, but also I'm like, wow, like Brock, if he has his number 1 receiver, there's so much conversation being happened right now, and rightfully so, because the way Purdy has played recently, of like, are you willing to pay Brock $65 million a year? And maybe that price tag is too high. I don't know. It isn't my money, so I don't care. But a lot of that conversation has stemmed from, well, you can get Sam Darnold for $45 million and save $15 million and maybe not hurt your team as much and be able to sign more players. I'd always push back and say the way San Francisco structures contracts, the first 2, if not 3 years, are going to be so low on cap hits, it's not going to matter. But I always push back and say, well, Sam Darnold's had Justin Jefferson, who has like 1,300 yards this year, 1,400 yards this year, and 10 touchdowns. He's had Jordan Addison for not a lot this year, but through certain stints. Like he had a 3-touchdown game this year. Like he's had Aaron Jones, and he's had, Hawkinson for a short period of time. But like he's had his number 1 receiver the majority of the season, and it shows. And I think like if you took away Jamar Chase from Joe Burrow, if you took away Zay Flowers from Lamar Jackson, take away Travis Kelce from Mahomes, take away Gronk from Brady, or in certain areas, take away Welker or Moss, whoever his number 1 receiver was that year, and maybe Brady's the outlier, but take away Devontae Adams from Aaron Rodgers in his prime. Like, a lot of that comes down to roster construction for sure, but those quarterbacks are going to have and see a downward trend in play. Now, how much? I don't know, but they're not going to be as good. And I think a lot of this is like we just go, oh, well, the Niners are all banged up and injured, and well, they should be better. And I would agree with that statement to a certain degree. I think that Brock at times has to be better. And there's a great example in this game. Like Brock Purdy was great, perfect for almost 3 quarters. Shanahan was in his bag for 3 quarters. And like Brock then throws 2 picks late, and you're like, that's back-breaking. Like, you can't do that. And we talked about after the Cardinals game and after the Dolphins game 2 weeks ago, like, this is just back-breaking stuff you just can't do, and this is why my concerns are more prevalent in the 2-minute drills. Team was winning 28-24. You can go up by 10, instead throws a pick. Now you're losing 31-28. Which, funny enough, his first interception could have happened on the previous play, but was negated by kind of a ghost defensive pass interference call that was like, okay, that's weird, but you'll take it. Then the very next play is a pick to Arnold, who jumps over the middle of the field, and he steals the football. Oh, excuse me, it was Kirby Joseph, excuse me. Then the second scenario, you're down by 6. Okay, this is your franchise quarterback's opportunity to get you the lead back, make it 35-34, right? Or at least 34-34. Tie the game up for us. And he just doesn't see Joseph just standing there in the middle of the football field, like, no excuse. He's just standing there. He's not disguising anything. He isn't playing on the far right and jumps the route. He's just standing there and throws it right to him. And it's stuff like that where you can't have that happen. And I think that, to me, is the right now the duality of Brock Purdy, where you can excuse, well, he doesn't have Brandon Ayuk. He doesn't have Christian McCaffrey. He hasn't had them for a lot of the season, and Shanahan hasn't been great. And the offensive line, who really hasn't been great all year, was okay against Detroit, which is odd because they had their 4th-string left tackle, their 3rd-string left guard playing out there, but still. Also, Nick Zakello is better than Aaron Banks. Like, I'm sorry, he just is. And Ben Barch is probably this team's starting left guard next year, if not Dominic Puni is. But I think that there's so much you can forgive Purdy for in regards to having a battle, Sam Darnold or, Brock Purdy, or should they trade for J.J. McCarthy? Like, there's so much to point to and say, like, well, Brock, like, you give him a fully healthy cast, even if it is just Brandon Ayuk and not Christian McCaffrey. I think this year is completely different for him. And I don't know how far that goes, but I think this game is an indication as to what this offense would have looked like more consistently if you look at Pearsall's box score and his production. Like, you just give Brock one guy that can beat man coverage, and you give him his favorite target, that being Brandon Ayuk, like, you would see an increased level of play. Now, the other half of that is, well, you have 2 brutal interceptions down the stretch over the middle of the football field. Like, that's where Shanahan's offense thrives. That's where this scheme lives and dies, lives and breathes. And if you can't do that consistently, which Brock has shown the ability to do so, but in recent weeks, it's like, what are you not seeing? Like, they're not masking things. You're just throwing it right to people. And it's tough because, like, you want to give Brock the benefit of the doubt because he's been so good for 2 years, but it's when you're down to nitty-gritty stuff, you want to pay a guy $65 million or less, everything gets nitpicked. And oddly enough, we've made a lot of his late-game interceptions this year, trailing, 2 touchdowns, like, whatever it may be, 2-minute drills. Like, he actually, weirdly enough, he has improved his turnover, his interception rate when trailing or tied with 2 minutes left in the football game. It was like 8.5% last year. Now it's like a 5.5, and it's like, that doesn't feel right, but it might be. And maybe it's because the season has just been so brutal, and a lot of the games have come down to 1 or 2 plays where you're like, oh, that's a backbreaker. And even in this game, like, the Niners, in a weird way, like, the expectation from me wasn't they were going to win by any means. But you're in the game. Like, you are firmly, like, you are leading the game for a long time, for like almost an entire half. You feel like you have control of the game even when you're down to a certain extent, and yet the quarterback throws 2 picks. And I think, I don't know if it's Brock himself and his head, his arm, like, whatever it may be, like, you just can't make those decisions, and it's going to be when you get down to, like, penny pinching with an owner and Brock Purdy, who's doing the contract stuff, like, that matters. And it comes down to, like, you are going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb saying, well, this is a problem, that's a problem, this is a problem. And I think that his 2-minute drill offense will be a sticking point. And I think that, Brock has all of the, I guess you could say, evidence to push back on those negative detractors, if you will, and can kind of come out looking more pristine than he actually was this year. But if he's done, which it feels like he is, he's not going to play this Sunday against the Cardinals in the season finale. His UCL injury is not serious, according to John Lynch and the MRI. Like, he's fine. He hit the funny bone. It needs a week or 2 to calm down, but he's fine. No long-term injury. Although, when you tear your UCL and then you have a shoulder injury and you have another kind of, I guess you can say, odd, like, you got sacked and your funny bone gets hit, like, that to me is like, well, let's pay you 55 instead of 60. Let's pay you 65 instead of, or excuse me, pay you 60 instead of 65. Like, I can't have a quarterback who's already physically limited to a certain degree and now have two shoulder/arm injuries on his throwing arm in 1 year, and then have a torn UCL in previous years. Like, that just can't happen. And you have to wonder, like, are they not questioning if they're going to pay Brock, but just, are you willing to pay Brock what you were before the year started? I'm not sure if that's the case, but since his year is over with, he will end with 3,865 passing yards, 20 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. So 25 total touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Not great. 2-to-1 is a fine touchdown to interception ratio, but ultimately you want that to be roughly like 2.5. And maybe I'm nitpicking here, but like, had Brock thrown for 30 touchdowns or 30 total touchdowns and 12 interceptions, I'd be okay with that. Brock has shown the ability to be much better, and I think this goes back to having Ayuk or having Pearsall up to speed the majority of the season, or even having a competent Deebo Samuel who actually wants to play on Sundays this year would have certainly helped him. Other than that, Garendo looks like a really good receiving back. 15 touches, 99 yards, a 40-yard catch. Not the greatest running back yet. The vision is lacking for sure. Deebo Samuel looks like himself again, which is odd. He was featured heavily early, but then not featured much the rest of the game. I'm not sure if he touched the football in the entire fourth quarter. Maybe I'm wrong there, but it didn't. In my head, I don't remember him touching the football that late in the game. But they finally used him as a decoy, which, like, yeah, duh. Like, why were you not doing that all year? George Kittle, 8 catches, 112 yards, 1,000 yards for the fourth time in his career. Love George. He's going to be an all-pro. He's already a Pro Bowler. He's on his way to the Hall of Fame. He just is. He's that good. You can argue, like, he's already better than Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates in regards to receiving. And he's played like half the years they have. And I get it's his time in the NFL, 2024, it's different. Tight ends are used differently. But when you talk about like the impact these players have, like George Kittle has had a much bigger impact than Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates in the passing game. And like, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like, I would not be shocked if he is the next 49ers Hall of Famer. Like, Willis got in, Bowman's probably not going to get in. Like, that's kind of like where things stand. Gore will probably get in, hopefully. We'll see what happens there. He should get in. It'll be Gore, then probably Kittle. Unless I'm forgetting somebody else. Like, Vernon Davis ain't going to get in. Alden Smith's not getting in. Like, it'll probably be Gore, then Kittle. Then you talk about Fred Warner and other guys like that. But it'll probably be George after Frank Gore, which shows you, like, how impressive he's been. He gets a lot of flack. And I don't get it. He's been so good his entire career, with like this terrible quarterback play through some years, 2018, 2020, and always finds a way to just be great. The Niners did have some Pro Bowlers this year. Kyle Juszczyk's a Pro Bowler. It's just me. Like, Kyle Juszczyk didn't seem to have that great of a year. Maybe I'm wrong, but like, it just felt like maybe because the whole year was down for the team, like, it's like, well, yeah, Kyle Juszczyk, haha, like, yeah, great, like, didn't, like, missing more blocks than usual, it felt like. Maybe it just felt like the highlighted plays were bad, but wasn't really too impressed with Kyle Juszczyk this year, but he's a Pro Bowler maybe by default, but nonetheless, Juszczyk is great. But it was Kittle, who goes for the 6th time in his career. Nick Bosa goes for the 5th time in his career. Fred Warner goes, and then, of course, Kyle Juszczyk. Yeah, like, all those guys deserve it, maybe outside of Juszczyk, but there really isn't many fullbacks. Like, I can't name another fullback in the NFC unless you want to include Taysom Hill there. And other than that, I'm like, no. Brock Purdy was an alternate. I don't really agree with that. I don't think he deserves to be an alternate, but okay, fine. Deommodore Lenoir not getting it. He's an alternate, but like, how do you not give Lenoir the Pro Bowl nod? He has been, if not the best cornerback in the NFC this year, he's been a top 4 cornerback in football, like in both the AFC and the NFC. He's allowed 0 touchdowns this year. Like, he's been incredible. I'm sure it comes down to like not knowing who he is. The name value's not there. He doesn't play in Chicago. He doesn't play in New York. He doesn't play in Kansas City. He doesn't play in these big market areas, if you will. He's like the number 2 on paper cornerback in San Francisco. Like, he's an underrated, smaller guy that goes in there, does his busy work, puts his head down and works hard, but like is probably never going to get the recognition he actually deserves. He'll get it from his players and his teammates and opposing players, but the fan base, or the fans, not this fan base, but other fan bases, like, aren't going to recognize him as like a really good player. He's probably going to find himself being an alternate like more years than he actually makes the actual team, which is sad because he's been so good this year. He's locked down Cooper Kupp for 0 catches and 0 yards. Like, it's just locked him down completely. And has given San Francisco the green light to not re-sign Charvarius Ward in the offseason, although I do think there is a path where Ward comes back on a 1-year deal, but we can get into that later on a different day. But Lenoir deserved it over anybody. Like, I could argue Lenoir deserved it over Juszczyk and even Fred Warner. Like, maybe even Nick Bosa. Like, I could argue that George Kittle and Gianmarco Lenoir have been this team's best players all year long, and it's annoying and sad that they haven't, at least Lenoir's case, didn't get the nod, but maybe he plays as an alternate. Trent Williams got in. I don't see how or why. Maybe he was in because just name value alone, but his 12th career Pro Bowl selection as an alternate this year. And then Leonard Floyd, of all people, gets voted in. It's his first career Pro Bowl alternate selection. Cool, I guess. Like, the box score will dictate he's had a pretty good year. My eyes will tell me differently. But good for him. I'm sure there's incentives in there, so I'm happy he'll get paid whatever he's getting paid. That's cool. But Lenoir is a massive, like, how do you not? How is he not in the top for anybody on defense? Speaking of defense, though, the Niners' defense was atrocious against the Lions. It was terrible. The run defense was just disgusting. Jahmyr Gibbs against San Francisco, the second most yards before contact, 85 this year. That's the second most in a game. Like, the defensive line was getting no pressure. It was getting no push. And that's to be expected against a really good Lions offensive line, but you can't give me something. Like, it was as if he was just given free 7 yards per play, which, look at the box score, it tells you that. Like, he was getting open. There was lanes to run. Like, the Niners defensive line was making Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm forgetting who the Lions backup running back is. They were looking like prime Le'Veon Bell with how patient they were running with. They were just like standing back there waiting for lanes and holes to open up. And San Francisco desperately has to improve the run defense. And that's not talking about, well, no, Dre Greenlaw didn't play. Like, no, the defensive line has to get better. Whether it is a healthy Javon Hargrave or it's getting a new run-stuffing defensive lineman. Like, Malik Collins, for as good as he is as a pass rusher, was never brought in to be a run-stuffer. He was brought in to go get the quarterback. And Jordan Elliott, who was brought in to be a run defender, really hasn't been that for them, which, what do you expect? He was a depth piece to begin with. They need to find, whether it is Collins or Hargrave, the pass-rushing defensive tackle. That's great. But they need to have, next to whoever starting next year, a run-stuffing defensive lineman. Because when you do that, it gives you 4 viable defensive linemen. Bosa, Hargrave, Collins, whoever it is, a run stuffer. Maybe it's DJ Jones or somebody else. Maybe it's a rookie. Then you look at the other side. Like, if you can find another edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa, because in this football game, the Niners had 11 total pressures. 7 of them came from Nick Bosa. 7. You have to find another player that can win by themselves. Leonard Floyd's not that. He's a really good number 2. But in this day and age, you have to kind of have a 1A, 1B. Like, the Pittsburgh Steelers have TJ Watt and Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith. They have these guys you can mix in. I'd rather Leonard Floyd be my Nick Herbig, whereas I have my Highsmith and I have my TJ Watt. Where it's okay, I have my Bosa and I have my other star, my 1A, my 1B. Then I can mix in, my Floyds and my Yetur Gross-Matoses when it's all said and done. I thought that the Niners defense Like, Ronaldo Green was great. Isaac Gaden was terrible in this game. He was like the sole reason as to why this defense was getting eaten up in the passing game. I thought Malik Mustafa was great. There's some missed tackles for sure in this game, a lot of them actually. DFF missed tackles. Mustafa missed some tackles. Hufanga missed some tackles. Like, it was an all around, like, you're just letting these guys get free and you're not securing tackles and whatnot. But Mustafa was flying around. When you get praise from Amon-Ra St. Brown, a Pro Bowler, one of the best receivers in football this year, and last year as well, like, that matters. Like, when you're getting praise of, like, number 6 is flying around doing things that other guys aren't doing. Like, I told you during the preseason, I told you in the post-draft podcast, like, Mustafa was going to be this team's best safety this year, and that wasn't even including injuries. Like, this was like, this guy is so good. You are going to, like, look at this and say, wow, like, he is this team's best safety. And he has been all year. He's been phenomenal. Like, he should have started from day one over George Odom. He's so much better than Jair Brown and even Hufanga. And we'll see what the future holds for Hufanga and Brown, but, like, Mustafa just clears them by leaps and bounds with his coverage skills and the way he's good in the run game. He's just so good. That said, Nick Sorensen, not a great game for him. I have been very lenient on him this year because of the context as to why he was hired and, like, what was going on behind the scenes. That said, like, the Niners defense is miscommunicating, not being able to handle, like, common motion by opposing offenses and, like, know, like, where to transition to with their coverages and stuff is, like, a major concern for me. Too many 3rd down and 4th down critical mistakes that have left guys wide open against Detroit. Just not a great day for him. I don't think his personnel is all there. Like, you saw what happened when Greenlaw was back and Hufanga was healthy. And you saw what the defense looked like when it was Mooney Ward and not Isaac Yiadom. Like, okay, but, like, you have to be able to survive, and they almost did. But there's just these kind of critical errors still in place, and I'm hoping, whether he comes back or not, like, you just have to clean that up. And I'm not sure San Francisco wants to wait another year, but would Shanahan be openly okay firing 2 defensive coordinators back to back? I'm not sure. Maybe he is, but not a great day from him. That said, like, I do believe that there is room to grow. Like, there has to be, and I think the Niners might be better off letting him try. I think Sorensen can be really good, but my concern is, like, the bigger one is, like, you only have 2 takeaways in 8 games since the bye. Like, that's a problem. You have 2 takeaways in 8 games. Like, that's not going to help. And the guy that was hired, Nick Sorensen, was the guy that was leading go get the ball drills. Like, he was the takeaway guy before he got promoted, and you only have 2 takeaways. Like, that's concerning. Like, that's your forte. You're not doing it. Like, that is a problem. And some of that's not his fault. He dropped, like, 3 picks against the Rams and whatnot. But, like, your defense has to be able to get takeaways. And that's why you draft Hufanga. That's why you draft Mustafa. That's why you have lockdown cornerbacks like Lenore and Green. That's why you have Fred, and you hopefully get Greenlaw back. Like, these guys should be able to create turnovers and get takeaways, and they haven't this year for a variety of reasons, but, like, that's concerning for me. When your forte is go get the ball, and they don't, it's like, well, that was your specialty, and it's not working. Maybe we have to make a change, so we'll see what comes with that. That said, that wraps up the, well, Jake Moody sucks. What else do you have to know? He's not good. He's really bad. This team lost by 6 points. He missed 7 points. Bang. Like, whether they win or lose, whatever, like, he's a massive reason as to why they haven't won some games this year. Missed field goal against the Rams earlier this season. He missed 3 field goals against the Buccaneers this year. He's the current highest drafted kicker in football. He has, amongst full-time kickers, the 31st ranked field goal percentage, just above 71. Terrible. I get it. There's contractual obligations they have to fulfill with him, and you don't want to cut him because some young kickers struggle early then find it late. Chase McLaughlin is a good reason, or an example of that. Joey Sly is a good reason of that. Both those guys being former Niner kickers and figuring it out later with the Colts and I think it's the Patriots with Sly. But you gotta bring somebody else in. I don't care if it's Anders Carlson, Matthew Wright. It doesn't matter. You have to bring somebody in. There's too many good undrafted kickers to not be like, look, Jake, Cam Latu was a bust. Trey Lance was a bust. Solomon Thomas was a bust. Reuben Foster was a bust. Like, we need to be open and say, look, like, we just can't sit here and wait anymore to see Jake Moody and put games on the line with him. Like, they gave him a 50-yarder and he missed it, then said, go out there and hit a 58-yarder and he missed that one. And it's just like, oh, like, what are you good for? Like, as of this point, you are the second worst kicker in football and are the highest drafted one. If that was a quarterback, that'd be a bust. Like, he's either got to go or it's going to be an open competition, and I would not be shocked to see him lose, and they have to be willing to cut their losses. You have to. That said, that's it for the Detroit Lions review. It was over 30 minutes, so forgive me for that, but a lot to hit on there. Let's move on to the Cardinals game this Sunday. Joshua Dobbs will start in place of Brock Purdy, who I'm assuming will go on injured reserve for this game. I see no reason as to why they don't do that to elevate somebody from the practice squad for this Sunday. That said, we're not exactly sure who else will play this Sunday. This could be one of those like, hey, like, my arm's kind of sore, coach. Do I have to play? The injury report was pretty extensive. There were some limiteds. George Kittle, he'll probably play. Isaac Gatum will play. Pearsall will play. But the DNPs yesterday were Brock Purdy. He's not going to play. Deebo Samuel, I'm not sure if he plays or not. Nick Bosa, he may or may not play. Colton McKivitz didn't play against the Lions. We'll see if he plays this Sunday. Spencer Burford didn't play against the Lions. Maybe he comes back for Week 18. We shall see. Leonard Floyd, Deommodore Lenoir hurt his shoulder against the Lions. He finished that game, so we'll see what happens on Sunday against the Cardinals. Jair Brown didn't practice. Robert Hill Jr. didn't practice, and Demetrius Flannigan-Falls didn't practice. A lot of guys that didn't practice. You have to wonder, like, with this veteran team, they're just kind of waiting and begging to get to the end of the year. Like, it's one more game. Finish this thing out. Like, beating the Cardinals. Like, would you rather be 6-11 or 7-10? Like, that's my kind of like, well, I mean, right now you have the 15th overall pick. I don't think San Francisco is playing for, like, draft capital. Like, oh, like, well, now we can be pick 12 or 13. Like, I don't think that matters too much, but the Cardinals aren't going to have James Conner. They're playing for nothing, really. Let me ask you this. Would you rather be the Niners, who walked into this year with Super Bowl aspirations, and then get decimated by injuries and then kind of float your way through the entire year and be in games and lose games and then be out of games and win games and kind of have a down year and have the excuse of the injuries, or be the Cardinals, who were an up-and-coming team that was leading the NFC West by like 2 or 3 games at one point this year, and then fumbling down the end of the season and now not making the playoffs whatsoever? I don't know. Like, that to me is a conundrum of like, well, like, I think we all can collectively say, like, we have more belief that this Niners team bounces back next year compared to the Cardinals, but I think I'd rather be San Francisco. Like, you had a 2.5, 3-game lead over the NFC West, which the Rams looked like they were done early and stormed back. The Seahawks were kind of surviving but not thriving, and San Francisco is kind of floating along. Like, the Cardinals had every opportunity to win the NFC West this year and fumbled it, where San Francisco really didn't have a chance. They did, but, like, they really didn't. Who would you rather be? I think I'd rather be San Francisco. That said, the expectations for Sunday, like, are they simply just survive, play 60 minutes, and be done? Is it, oh no, like, go out there and win and beat the Cardinals and, win one division game this year. You've only beaten the Seahawks before the bye week. You've been swept by the Rams. You've lost your second one to Seattle. Like, is this a pride game for San Francisco? You're on the road in Arizona. Like, is this where you want to be? Is this a game where you're like, well, you had a valiant effort against the Lions. You could have won that game and upset them. And then you beat the Cardinals and you feel pretty good about yourself being 7-10. Like, is that where you want to be? Because record-wise, maybe you look at 7-10 and say, okay, we're only 2 games away from being in the wild card hunt again, right? But if you're 6-11, you're 3 games out of the wild card hunt. You feel like maybe you're further back than you actually were. It looks worse on paper than it actually was, albeit this year is pretty bad. Like, what does this game change anything from an optics perspective? Like, I want to see Juwan Jennings reach 1,000 yards. I want to see Pearsall, have 6 catches for 85 yards. I want to see him build off of the Lions game. Purdy's not going to play. Like, I don't really care about the quarterback play. I don't care about Joshua Dobbs. He may not even be here next year. He might be, but I mean, I don't know. Like, he's playing for a job. He's playing for he wasn't even quarterback 2 most of the season. And, I don't think he'll be back this year. Like, he wanted to be quarterback number 2. He was signed to be quarterback number 2 based off money and wasn't for 10 weeks of the season. I don't think he'll be back. He's playing for a different job, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him go to Atlanta. I wouldn't be shocked if he's in Minnesota again. If they move on, whether it's Darnold or McCarthy starting, one of those guys isn't going to be there next year. At least it seems that way. I wouldn't be shocked to see him go to the Browns. He's playing for a different job, in my opinion. Unless Shanahan likes him so much and he wants to make him quarterback too, I don't see that happening. But hey, I mean, Joshua Dobbs is a fine quarterback. That's a good backup. That said, I just don't care. My mind isn't gotta evaluate Joshua Dobbs this Sunday. It's no, cool, you're playing. Can you help Kittle and Juwan and Pearsall get their jobs done? The Cardinals aren't going to have James Conner, which helps San Francisco. They're not going to have Trey Benson. It's I would not be shocked to see San Francisco win this football game. But I'm sure there are some people that are just lose. Play Brandon Allen, lose this football game, be 6-11, improve your draft stock potentially, and just get out. Be done. This team has already secured a 4th place schedule next year. They've already clinched a last place spot in the division this season. This game literally means nothing outside of improving your draft stock, or I guess not improving it, de-improving it, unimproving it, whatever that word is. For the defense, are we you gotta finish strong? Is it just get in and get out? I don't know about you, but my interest is not I'm gonna be glued to my seat on Sunday against the Cardinals. It's yeah, it'll be on, and I'll watch it, and I want to see my team do well. But in the back of my head, I'm maybe it's better you don't. And I hate saying that because, you want to be competitive and play for pride. These guys certainly will. But, I'm not going to sit here and dissect, how do you stop Kyler Murray? How do you scheme up against the Cardinals offense? The Cardinals defense, why? We do that for games that matter. And, it's obviously the fan in me saying this, but it's you cannot tell me that Debo and Fred on a broken ankle and Bosa are I don't want to finish this. I just want to be done because I'm tired and I'm broken down and my ankle is fractured and my hip hurts, and it's hey, if Robert Beal Jr. was healthy, would Bosa even play in this game? I know I wouldn't. And maybe that's me being selfish and not being in the locker room. But I also think, because you watched Devondre Campbell quit this year, because you had so many injuries, you're almost playing as a leader to, finish the job. We're yeah, we may suck. We might be terrible. But, at the end of the day, we're going to finish the job. We're going to go out there and handshake the opponent and call it a day. I forgot who it was. I think it may have been... was it the Oregon game? It may have been the Oregon game this past weekend. And if I'm wrong, forgive me. But the head coach dragged his players back onto the field to like shake hands with Ohio State. That game or Arizona State, one of them, like dragged the players back on the field and we're like, nope, like we're going to do this the right way. And I think for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, like doing things the right way, like that matters to them. And I think that'll be how things work on Sunday against the Cardinals. Like they're going to come out, give it their all. Like they want to win this football game, whether right or wrong. Like in their mind, they don't see a difference between the 15th pick and the 13th pick or 15 and 12. But again, in the back of my head, it's like, well, does that stop you from being able to get a star right tackle or a star, I don't know, defensive end? Like the last thing you want to do is have pick 15 and at pick 13, that star edge rusher is gone. Like that's the one thing I'm kind of scared about this Sunday. But I think at this point, it's like, I just like the offense itself. The offensive line sucks. I want to see Pooney play a little better to end the year. He's not been great in recent weeks, but I think I do want to see Juwan get his 1K, kind of finish his breakout season on top. I want to see Pearsall continue his nice hot stretch he had against the Lions into the Cardinals, like carry over into the year thinking, okay, like there's better things to come. But like I'm just so torn. I'm so torn. It's like, do I want the Niners to start 2025 with an L? I mean, I wouldn't be too mad about it, which I hate saying, but you know, I am undoubtedly divided in regards to like what my mindset is going into Sunday against the Cardinals. But like that said, it's like, oh, like as fans, as the team, really, like despite them wanting to go out there and give it their all or, you know, play hard and take it to the Cardinals, it's like, cool, thumbs up, I'm happy, like, E for effort, but don't. Don't. Which is great because, like, I cannot wait for draft season. We're going to do more draft content this year. Deep dives and breakdowns, going in through positional groups, like top 10s and top 5s. That way you guys have everything you need to know when it comes to draft night. Because draft night cannot come soon enough. Like, draft season's almost here. It'll be here on Monday, essentially, for us Niner fans. Like, I cannot wait to dive into that and prepare and look into guys. Like, last year, we hit the nail on the head on Pearsall and Garendo. I want to do that again. Like, let's see where in year 2 of my complete and like honest and like scouting draft process, like, can I find the next 2 San Francisco 49ers? We hit the nail on the head there, but that starts this Sunday. Knowing where San Francisco picks, knowing where they're going to be at, like the mock drafts start coming out soon, like hear how all these things work. But ultimately, it's like, I don't really care what happens on Sunday, to be honest with you. Just like, it's the last time seeing the San Francisco 49ers play this year. Enjoy it. Embellish it. Like, just love seeing the red and gold play. Whether you want to win or you want to lose, just like, you're not going to get to see them for, I don't know, 10 more months, 9 more months. Like, and enjoy this Sunday. That said, I hope you can like, share, subscribe, leave that review to the audio podcasting platforms and on the YouTube channel. Video podcasts and shows return on Monday, if not Sunday night, so stay tuned for that. If you can also follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the extra Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. If you want to see a NBA game, MLB game, an NFL game this year, you want to go to the playoffs, use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERS ACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Also go to sportsspyder.com. It's the one-stop shop for your team's latest news, podcast, and articles. And yeah, have a happy new year. Hope you had a wonderful holiday season. My name is Sterling Bennett, and for the last time in 2024 season and the first time in 2025, stay faithful.